Sometimes the closest place to get food is a gas station, or at least you can buy in a gas station to eat. And in this economic downturn, there are plenty of people suffering. I asked at a panel that was testifying before me a couple of weeks ago whether or not the panelists thought that healthcare was a human right. And not surprisingly, the person representing the insurance industry was the one who thought it was not a right. Emphatically just said no, without even bothering to explain the position. But the United States, hopefully, has entered a new era. We have not signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The United States and Somalia are the only two members of the United Nations that have not signed that convention. Think about that. Nor have we signed the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that are known as CEDAW. The United States, in some ways, it's not surprising that we haven't. It's the only human rights treaty which affirms the reproductive rights of women, so of course the United States couldn't sign it. But when I first got to Congress, which is now 10 years ago, a group of women marched over to the Senate, and we confronted Jesse Helms, who was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, about holding a hearing and the ratification of CEDAW. And it was an amazing experience for me. These are all members of Congress, women, walk over there. He's in a hearing. And he told us to act like ladies and to sit down, and that if we didn't, that he would call security to remove us, which he did. For that session, and for those until today, CEDAW has not been ratified. A very comprehensive statement, but yet very simple in its principles of ending discrimination against women. But now we have tremendous opportunity, and that's really the whole point. It's a new day in terms of Barack Obama as President of the United States and defining a new relationship that we have not only to the rest of the world, but as an old Chicago community organizer, he understands the priorities that we need in the United States of America to make us a haven for human rights as well. So let me just point out some of the progress that's already been made. The first week, the President overturned the global gag rule on family planning, which means that women around the world will have access to US dollars to control their reproduction and not to be forced to bring another child into poverty, but to make those decisions themselves. Understand that this is about contraception. The notion that contraception would be controversial is amazing to me, and it still persists. But of course, the money could not go to organizations that would even counsel or refer a woman about abortion, and even if they did it with their own money, they couldn't get this family planning assistance. That was overturned in the first week. The President prohibited torture, and it requires now that all interrogations follow the Army Field Manual, which lays out proper ways of interrogation. I'll talk more about that later. Talked about closing Guantanamo Bay. I've been there twice to Guantanamo Bay, and those people who talk about it being a modern and clean facility miss the point altogether. These are people who, many of whom were there because a bounty was paid to turn them in for over 6 years now, and sometimes in isolation, but regardless, with this endless, unknown end to their incarceration. And were it not for the Supreme Court, there wouldn't be any question on whether they could actually challenge their incarceration. But still, there are a couple hundred plus people that remain there, and it is, I think, one of the things that has made the United States less safe in the world, aside from this gross human rights violation. We've closed the black sites, those places that were finally revealed that people were spirited away to, essentially disappeared and tortured for the sake, in your name and in mine, for the sake of the safety of the United States. Those are closed. The United States will seek a seat on the UN Human Rights Council, which is an important development. Janet Napolitano, the Secretary of Homeland Security, announced a halt to all the ICE raids, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement raids in the United States, where you would have these, going into plants and knocking on doors at 6 o'clock in the morning. Here in our own city, where essentially we're a pretty immigrant-friendly place. And my district has people from all over the globe. That's our strength, not our weakness. And yet there's this constant fear of a door knock that's going to separate families who have come here mainly as economic refugees to achieve the same thing as everyone else. They want a better life for their children, for their family, and opportunity. I serve on the Intelligence Committee, among others, in the House of Representatives. Something I had not really thought about when I first went to the House of Representatives. I thought more about healthcare and consumer issues. But Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, the first woman ever, asked me last session if I would be willing to serve my country by serving on the Intelligence Committee. I wasn't really aware of what a serious question that was. This is a committee that fought of these last 2 years of the Bush administration against an administration, a president, who believed what Nixon famously said, that if the president does it, it's not illegal. And the vision of what was legal was so incredibly broad. We're finding more and more out about that. Let me just say that the leadership in the House has a somewhat different emphasis, I think, than our president, in the sense that I think it is important to look back some, to understand how we came to this place. I want to use my chairmanship on the Intelligence Committee of the Oversight and Investigations Committee to do as much of that as I possibly can. How did we get to the point where we tortured people? What happened to the investigation of 2 people who died in U.S. custody under interrogation? Where is that investigation right now? Those are the kinds of questions. I'm a co-sponsor of John Conyers' bill to create a special commission to review the actions of the Bush administration and their systematic method to limit civil liberties in the wake of 9/11. And last week, Senator Leahy called for a truth commission. But we've seen domestic spying that went on, again, in the name of protecting the United States, protecting you and me. Overzealous prosecutors. We even saw them in the case of going after people like Senator Stevens, who is not a great guy, but because of the overzealousness of the prosecution and the things that they did, we couldn't even convict him of things he may have been guilty of.